It's the voice of the one and only DJ Scream, letting you know that you are now in tune to the Casual Flex, where culture meets sports and casuals are welcome. Now here's your host, Phillip Dukes.
Yo, welcome to a very special edition of the Casual Flex. I'm your host, Phillip Dukes, aka Dukes the Scoop. Check me out on Instagram and Twitter at Dukes the Scoop, and make sure you like and subscribe. Today's episode will be brought to you by One More Question Clothing, a brand developed by Travis Barber, a community activist on the south side of Atlanta. Really accomplished ball player, does a lot in the community. Has a really interesting story. Make sure you check out his movie and book. But yeah, make sure you go follow the number one, MOMO question, and make sure you like and support what my good brother has going on. But yeah, we got something to talk about today, y'all. Like for sure, like it's going down. Deion takes the job at Colorado. Wow. There's been a lot of backlash in the Black community for Deion taking this job based on the fact of how people feel about, was Deion genuine in saying that he wanted to leave Jackson State a better place than he found it? So I think there's a lot to unpack here. And for those who may not be as familiar with the culture, there's a lot of unsaid, I would say, kind of parameters to saying certain things and setting expectations that haven't been followed through upon. And I'm not sure if Deion Sanders has done that at all. So Deion takes the job. We know Deion wanted to get into coaching at a higher level than he was. Became a pretty good high school coach. There wasn't an opportunity for him at the Power 5 level, I believe. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I have no problem standing corrected. But to my knowledge, I believe that he wanted to coach he wanted the Florida State job when it was available back then. He interviewed for a couple of jobs previously and didn't get them. And at the time, Jackson State was the best place for Deion to have control of a situation and for him to prove what he could do. Now, two things can be true. It can be mutually true that Deion Sanders needed Jackson State just as much as Jackson State needed Deion. Deion Sanders needed an opportunity to show what he could do. Jackson State afforded him that opportunity. Jackson State needed someone to come in, change the culture, bring some revenue. Because there are a lot of people saying, oh, well, Jackson State was selling out games before Deion. And so, look, Deion Sanders is not the average guy to walk into your program and say, hey, I'm just going to coach it and that'll be it. No, he brought the show. He brought the pizzazz. He brought a lot more fanfare. He brought 60 Minutes. He brought College Game Day. He brought new facilities. He brought more money. And anybody who thinks that Deion Sanders didn't do anything for Jackson State is just being a hater. Let's just call it. I love my favorite saying. Let's call a spade a spade. That is a clear spade. If you don't think Deion Sanders did anything to push Jackson State forward, then you're fooling yourself. And what you want to do is argue more so than you want to state facts. This is the most coverage we've ever seen Jackson State have on a national level. You cannot deny that. All right? Travis Hunter going to Jackson State put all eyes on Jackson State. It did. So there have been multiple times. Right now, all eyes are still on Jackson State. Now some of those eyes are diverting to Colorado, but for the longest time, I haven't seen let's talk about this. When it comes to HBCUs, the ones that got the most TV time traditionally was Southern and Grambling because of the game that was played on NBC. Now this is me coming from Atlanta, right? Grew up, my mother was a Tennessee State graduate. A lot of my family went to Tennessee State. My sister went to Savannah State, HBCU, and my college decision came down between my final two schools were Albany State and Auburn. So the HBCU experience hasn't been lost upon me at all. Growing up, always went to the Tennessee State FAMU Classic, the 100 Black Men of Atlanta Classic. My whole family went. My mom bought 30 tickets at a time. When she was able to, when my mom got situated, she made sure that she gave back. And those weren't the only games that we went to. Now, is that the game I went to the most? Yes. But we also went to other Tennessee State games, and my family did as well. The HBCU experience is something that no matter what is involved or who gets involved, it's something that will not be altered by one person. So for the people that are saying that HBCU legacy has been tarnished by Deion Sanders, then you cannot be familiar with true HBCU legacy, because there is no person, body, place, or thing that is bigger than the HBCU experience. And I'll stand on that. Deion Sanders ain't bigger than the establishment of HBCUs. He's not. And for us to continue to tear this man down and put the future of historically Black colleges upon his shoulders because he did a good job while he was there, and for everybody's calling him selfish, you've got to be just as selfish for wanting him to stay. Like, when was enough ever going to be enough? 3 years wasn't enough. So does that mean that does Hugh Jackson have to stay as well? Does Eddie George have to stay at Tennessee State for the remainder of his career? Does every coach that's head coaching an HBCU at an HBCU, do they have to stay there? If Deion Sanders would have lost 5 games a year, if he loses 6 games this year, do they just have to keep him just because he's Deion? Does football not matter at all? There are a lot of questions to unpack here. Deion said a quote that stuck with me. And he said, if you're not being elevated, you're getting terminated. Or if you're not being terminated, you got to be elevated or terminated, so to speak, in so many words. And it's so true. Because if Deion wasn't winning all these games, it would be Deion Sanders made a failed attempt at coaching in the HBCU. Deion Sanders is a good coach. Now, because he was a good coach, he does have people believing in him. He is able to recruit at a level we've never seen at the HBCU level. It is kind of like a double-edged sword. The fact that he has done so well that people feel like it's a death row contract. So basically, Deion Sanders, in a lot of people's eyes, Deion Sanders going to Jackson State was basically a death row contract. You're in it for life. You got to be swacked to the fullest. But I guarantee you, if the University of Colorado calls Eddie Robinson at Alabama State, I guarantee you he listens. If that was any other head coach in the SWAC, I would. I can't say this because I don't know what's in another man's mind, but I'm willing to wager almost everything that I've got that if you were to say, hey, look, whatever, name a school in the SWAC, take their head coach and offer them the same deal Deion Sanders just got. You don't think they would take it? You don't think Eddie Robinson would take it? He's SWAC. You don't think he would take it? Exactly. Would you take it? And I also, to a lot of the social media people that are bashing Deion and bashing the message and bashing whatever, how many HBCU games did you go to this year? And I see some people in Atlanta talking a whole lot that I know. And I'm like, you know what? Okay, cool. All right, you went to homecoming. Outside of homecoming, how many Clark games did you go to? Outside of Spellhouse homecoming, how many Morehouse football games did you go to? And then take that into comparison to how many Hawks games and how many Falcons games you went to. Now think about that for the same people. Now this is only for the people who are saying that, oh, Deion ain't swag, he ain't real HBCU because he's supposed to stay and he's supposed to done this and done that. What are you doing for the HBCUs? Right? Because you can't allow the owners of the future of something so important to be on the shoulders of one man. He is a man. Deion Sanders is a man. He puts his pants on one leg at a time. And the crazy part about it is when the other schools were playing Deion, they were quick to bring up how there's nothing that special about him. He's just another man. They're just another team. He's just Deion. He's just another man to me. But now when that man makes his own decision, that's his human right, is to make a decision for himself and his family and for the mission that he wants. Missions change. How long was it going? Like, I think it was a job well done. Oh, well, he lied because he said that he was going to be able to provide somewhere where he could speak the same language that a lot of guys and offer them an opportunity that they probably wouldn't see anywhere else. Travis Hunter will never forget. If Travis Hunter chooses to leave, he will never forget the year he had at Jackson State. And Deion didn't get a number one class. He got a number one player. Now, he got a lot of other players to come with him, but that was because he's Deion. But what if something happened to Deion, then what? What if last year when Deion Sanders had that issue with his foot, surgery didn't go right, he wasn't able to coach again? Then what happens? HBCU. So basically what a lot of people are saying is Deion Sanders was HBCUs. He's the HBCUs. Ain't no Clark, ain't no FAMU, ain't no NC A&T, ain't none of that. Ain't no Howard, ain't no Hampton. None of that. It's Deion. And so for every player that goes to an HBCU and does well and can jump in the transfer portal and go to a bigger opportunity, are those players wrong as well? When Cam Newton's little brother, Kalen, was balling at Howard, decided to transfer out, was he wrong? Or was he living his life and making his own decision? And I think that's one thing that I don't like about our culture is we have to live up to a different standard based on the fact of the standard that we put on ourselves. Somebody does well with a business in their area and they aren't supposed to expand to other areas. That ain't keeping it real. A guy does well for himself and moves his family out into a different part of town. He ain't keeping it real. Okay. So you got to stay in the projects your whole life and like rappers. That's why all these damn rappers dying. Because we so worried about keeping it real and upholding this status and this culture that we got going on that nobody else has to deal with. Nobody else got to deal with this, man. Ain't nobody else got to deal with that. I don't like it because at the end of the day, man, we like, and I've been a victim too. We all have. Man, Dave Chappelle, when he put out that skit about when keeping the real goes wrong, that's real. We don't want to, like, there's a fear of elevation sometimes because we might lose our black card. That's crazy. Oh, yeah, got to keep it real, man. You don't do that, you're selling out. I work as an operations manager first and foremost every day. And you know what? Sometimes I feel bad for telling somebody to go do their job because it's like, oh man, he gonna think I'm a sellout. Well, you guess what? I don't care because at the end of the day, we both came in here and decided that we was gonna do a job. All right. So just because I'm a manager and just because you a plant associate, don't mean that, we both in here to do a job. But because I want to ask you to do the right thing, oh, you just working for the man, you one of them. It's crazy. And it's something that I think that especially a lot of guys I went to a predominantly white institution. I went to Auburn. There's a lot of guys like me who went to Auburn and never picked up a football or a basketball, but still went D1. And we struggle with that sometimes. When you get to being around your families, because I'm not the only guy from an urban area that went to Auburn without an athletic scholarship. but I was in the minority. If you break down the numbers, about 1% of black males who graduated Auburn at the time I was there, it was about 1% of the population were black males that didn't play any sports. You can do the numbers on that. About 1% of the total population. So with that being said, understanding the pressure that comes along with that, it's crazy. So Deion, whatever your mission is, whatever your goal is, maybe Deion wants to become the first black head coach to win a national championship. If he does that, then what? History don't matter. I saw somebody make a comment. It kind of made me mad. It was like, oh yeah, man. So this dude was like an agent. He commented on one of D.L. Hughley's posts about the situation. He said he's a player agent. He's like, yeah, man, he's just gonna allow the man to make money off his back like they've been doing. I'm like, man, come on, dog. Like, look, I get it. I understand it. I do. But the thing is, it's like, man, so with that line of thinking, no, who's building so basically we need to go back to the Negro Leagues, basically. So when HBCU athletes do well enough to go to the NFL or go to the NBA or go to Major League Baseball, they don't need to go because that ain't keeping the SWAC. What they need to do is go to the SWAC Pro League. And then if they can't go there, they need to wait on it because that's keeping it real. Or don't go to the NFL. Just automatically don't go into a coaching program and start coaching in the SWAC instead of going to the NFL because that's keeping it real. That's not keeping it real. What's keeping it real is understanding that it's 2022 and that we got, as a people and a culture, we got to start moving the culture forward enough that we can be comfortable in our own skin no matter where we are in the country. No matter where we are, we got to be able to be comfortable in who we are, comfortable in our blackness, comfortable in our culture. We got to be comfortable enough to be who we are wherever we are. That's pushing the culture forward. We got to be comfortable enough to say that no man is bigger than the mission. If Deion did his 3 years, how many years did you do? How many years out? To the people that's saying Deion ain't did this and they so mad at him and all. Well, how many years did you do? How many years did you pick up for the cause? How much have you donated out of your check to an HBCU this year? And there's gonna be a lot of people that have great answers for that. But I got a feeling there's a lot more people who running their mouth on social media about something like that ain't doing enough in their own kitchen. They not taking care of their own house. They throwing rocks in the glass house. So anybody, I'm open to a healthy debate, but before we get to debating, just let me see your ticket stubs for how many HBCU games you went to this year, and then let me see your ticket stubs for how many Falcons games or how many professional games you went to. And hopefully the HBCU games, not classics, not homecomings. We're talking about the games. All games should be selling out. You should be having a ticket to the guys that are going crazy about Deion living his life. So yeah, I do feel a kind of way about that. But all right, that's enough on that one. Let's go to Auburn. Auburn has a new coach, Hugh Freeze, and right now they're looking for coordinators. The hot name in the coordinator race right now is Derek Nix, former running back at Southern Mississippi in the early 2000s, late 90s. Really accomplished guy, got some time in the league. It's been at Ole Miss for a while now. Really respected recruiter in Mississippi. I don't think he's ever called it. He's been a running backs coach, and more recently, he's been a wide receivers coach. I think that if he does come right now, from what people are saying, is that he is torn on does he want to come in that capacity. He wouldn't come. He wouldn't make a lateral move as a wide receivers coach, or it would have to be a promotion. That leads me to believe that if he did come, he would be coaching the wide receivers, and the UCF wide receiver coach Grant Hurd probably hasn't already accepted the job, has been reported some places, but that remains to be seen. But I do think that if Derek Nix was to take the job, I think it'd be great. As we know, recruiting is the main thing. So a lot of time we got a saying that we say, keep the main thing the main thing. Recruiting is, I mean, Jimmy's and Joe's. You got to have guys. You got to have players in order to be successful. Just to go back into what Deion did. Deion had a great scheme for that conference, but he had the best players in the conference as well. So, yeah, I think Derek Nix will be a great addition if he does decide to come. I've heard some other names too. Matt Longo, the offense coordinator at North Carolina. Then you've got a couple other names. I think Derek Nix is the front runner at this point, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Also, you've got the defensive coordinator. Who's it going to be? People are saying that Crime Dog's got the job already. He'll be co-DC. If Crime Dog were to be co-DC, the assumption is that Travis Williams of UCF would be the other co-defensive coordinator. They would call it together. I think that would be a strong move as far as recruiting wise. I do think that Travis left a lot to be desired this past weekend. And UCF, they gave up over 600 yards to Tulane. But, I mean, if that's the criteria, if your last game is the criteria based upon that your hire is based upon, then Hugh Freeze wouldn't have a job either after that bad streak that he had towards the end of the season. So, Lane Kiffin neither. I mean, Lane Kiffin laid an egg in his last game this season too. So, we'll see. One thing I do want to address, though, there's been like this thing out that says that Travis Williams doesn't call his own plays, and that's just not true. I talked to a couple of guys in the media space in Auburn about that. It was agreed upon that maybe some stuff that some people may take differently as far as what goes into calling the plays. Maybe he's getting some help with the game plan, but I've confirmed and verified that Travis Williams has called every play the last 2 years. So you can't get on him for giving up 600 yards and then follow that up and say, oh, well, he ain't calling the plays. I mean, come on, which one is it, right? So don't be convenient. If you don't agree with him being the defensive coordinator, that's one thing, but just don't put a lie on top of it. Now, the other candidate for defensive coordinator who I think is really interesting is Barry Odom of Arkansas, who I think is going to leave Arkansas regardless. I think he's in on the Tulsa job. He's been a head coach. He's been successful in the SEC, former Missouri head coach. Really knows a lot. I think he'll do a lot as far as the X's and O's. Having a former head coach does help. I talked to Joshua Horton of Langston Hughes. His recruitment, he took a picture the other day. He had Mark when he committed to flip his commitment to Miami. He had Mario Cristobal and Charlie Strong in the house. That's strong. The more head coaches that you could put in a recruiting circle, I mean, in his house, that's wild. So I think Barry Odom would also be a really good candidate if he were to get it. I also heard Chris Kiffin, who I think has a lot of the experience at this level. Also, right now, I mean, to go from coaching the D-line like the Browns with probably one of the best defensive linemen in the game, and Myles Garrett has some familiarity with Jeremy Garrett, the new defensive line coach who was brought over from Liberty, who's already making an impact on the recruiting trail at Madhouse, home to the training facility that's home to 5-star James Smith and 5-star Quay Russo. Tracy Varner, who runs that facility, who's one of the guys who runs it, was very impressed with Garrett, so much so that Auburn will be probably getting an unofficial visit and possibly leading up to getting an official visit. So I think that's big in their recruitment. But yeah, if I had to, it's hard for me to say who I think the best candidate is. Recruiting wise, I think Travis probably be the best candidate. Experience wise, I probably think that Barry Odom is probably the best candidate. And if it came down to intangibles, I would probably say Chris Kiffin. And Zach Arnett was a name that I thought was super interesting. Does a lot of exotic blitzing, has some familiarity in the SEC West, knows the recruiting imprint. I don't think would be as good as a recruiter for Auburn as Trav would, but I do think having that experience in the SEC, as far as being a younger guy doing it too, kind of in the same mode as a Dan Lanning. So I think he's another really, really interesting candidate. So I don't think if you out of those four, Auburn can't really do any wrong. All four have their pluses and their minuses, but yeah, I think that's a pretty solid class. And then it could be somebody nobody knows. Like everybody goes to the message boards and you take something, but as a guy who contributes and who's an insider, man, we all passing around information and we all talk off the record and we all trying to figure out what's going on. So I think a lot of times people just take that stuff as fact. Oh, I saw it on the message board. It's got to be true. And as we saw, insider information and trying to be first a lot of times, it can get you in some hot water. So, yeah, definitely, I think it does bear some patience. But I would think that a decision will have to be made today, Monday or Tuesday, with the portal opening up because you can't afford to get behind. And so Auburn recruiting last week, you had they only got like 5-6 coaches that can go out. Like I don't know how they doing it, but as far as coaches that are actually on the staff, all you got is Zach Etheridge, Christian Robinson, Cadillac Williams, Hugh Freeze, and I think the new guy, the tight ends coach from Liberty. I don't even know if he's on field officially or not. He hasn't even been officially introduced. I call him Ben Agamawa, I think. Forgive me. But with that being said, you can't spread your imprint out. So you got state championship games in Alabama last week. You got state semifinals games in Georgia last week. So I do know that Hugh Freeze is planning on being in the Atlanta area. He will be making the stop towards Langston Hughes this week. So I think that should go well for Auburn recruiting. But yeah, it remains to be seen. But what I do know is that Hugh Freeze has a good pulse of how to recruit in the SEC. And I really just think he's pretty much the football version of Bruce Pearl. I can't say that enough. All right, let's go to the Falcons. Man, you know what? Man, the Falcons lost, dog. Last week I said we don't put Mariota in. I said don't do Mariota. It's too early. Don't worry about it. Just let Ritter. But some of that stuff I saw today, I'm like, man, maybe we got to get Ritter a shot. But you don't want to ruin a young quarterback by putting him into a bad situation. You know, you want him to be able to blossom and develop in the best situation possible. This is not the best iteration of the Falcons offense. Even if the Falcons were to get to the playoffs, would it be worth it? Because do you think that quarterback is the only position that the Falcons need in order to go deep into the playoffs? Absolutely not. That roster still needs a lot of work. The Falcons have a lot of money. Maybe Ritter isn't your quarterback of the future. Maybe he is, but you might as well wait until next year. Get some free agent money. You might be, let's say something goes wacky, Lamar Jackson wants to leave, pay the man, bring him to Atlanta. Who knows, right? The Falcons did go after Deshaun Watson earlier this year. The Browns made an offer that couldn't be refused, fully guaranteed, which I think that the Falcons probably are thankful that they didn't do with the way things worked out. So, yeah, I think I don't know, man. It's hard. It's tough being a Falcons fan, dog. It's just tough, man. I mean, sometimes you get to the point where you get excited and you think you got to win it. And the Falcons have been in every game this year, so that's a kudos to Arthur Smith for getting those guys ready to play. I did see some things that I probably would have liked to see some better clock management today, but hey, man, you know, everybody makes mistakes. But yeah, I think that all in all, let's take some time and reflect in ourselves, and let's, you know, in the holiday season, and let's take a step back from how important we think sports are, and then remember that, you know, all of this ain't, you know, it's so much more going on in the world besides sports. So, hey, man, be thankful for your loved ones, show gratitude, show love, and stop being so hard on yourself. You're doing a great job. That's my time for today. This week's code word is one mo. If you DM me the phrase one mo, like one M-O, I got a surprise for you. The first 3 people that do it, we're going to do either Cash App or I might send you some gear. All right, let me know. P Dukes, Dukes the Scoop. I'm out.